Thank you everyone for joining. I welcome you all to today's first workshop on completing and refining a bioinformatics research project. I'm Sonalika Ray and I'm the Omics Logic Community Manager responsible for daily interaction with thousands of users that are a part of our bioinformatics community managed by Pine Biotech. Omics Logic is an international program that is running in 5 different regions with over 10,000 users around the world. And due to this fast growth, our team is working with local and regional coordinators that are helping refine local program logistics and leverage our online training resources, adapting them to the needs of students and researchers around the world. Our training is designed to allow participants to apply methods to curated and new datasets and develop independent projects that showcase what has been learned in the context of a personal portfolio of projects. As a result, anyone starting on this journey in bioinformatics can start developing a project of their own. In fact, we have already worked with many students who have completed this kind of training and developed a lot of projects and interesting research projects actually that won awards and got published in peer-reviewed journals as well. And today in the workshop, you will hear about some of the critical points that make a project ready for peer review and find tools to complete your analysis quickly before the submission. And also we would be addressing any of the gaps that stand out. We will also introduce a detailed explanation of upcoming panels, judges, and topics that will be covered, as well as explained how the judging process will work and be prepared for the symposium with a complete and competitive project that will be included in the competition and get reviewed by the expert panel. So now let's talk more about the workshop. And now I would like to pass it on to Ilya to tell you more about the workshop, and then we would be discussing about ways to complete and refine your project. Over to you, Ilya.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonalika, and welcome everyone. Today, we are going to be briefly talking about the symposium that's coming up and where you will be able to present your posters and participate in the competition. And to complete your project, we will then hear from Dr. Harpreet Kaur, who's very experienced in completing projects and sharing them in peer-reviewed publications. But before we jump into that, I want to briefly explain why bioinformatics is such a critical skill and what is the gap that we are trying to address. So briefly about us, we are, as a part of a company, decided that we want to help others utilize bioinformatics in an efficient way. And we realized that the gap is actually in people. So when we talk about how data is generated and how it is used, the methodologies that have been so tremendously impacted by this revolution in genomics have made it very easy to produce cheap and high quality data that has a lot of detail. But the problem is that there's a gap between data and information. And what that means is that we are generating data at a much higher pace than the information that is reliable, clear, and actionable can be extracted from this omics data. And so when we did a survey a few years ago, not we, but actually people at RNA-seq blog, they found that the data analysis part is the highest priority in terms of filling in that gap. So in fact, what is happening is that universities, typically where students get this really high quality preparation in many different fields, do not have the experience in applying bioinformatics to real research questions as they graduate. And so as a result, when we come to companies that are hiring, the companies are hiring for hard skills and the universities are looking for people that have these hard skills, but at the same time, they want people that know how to ask the right question and find answers in complex data. And so that is why we essentially designed the Omics Logic training programs to help prepare those kinds of skills. So the real objective here is to incorporate these different technical skills into a process of research. And a standard way to start your research is to ask a question. Asking the right question and finding the right data that can answer your question in a comprehensive, conclusive, and reproducible way is critical for the process of believing in science, learning from science, being able to find new insights using the scientific method. And so that is why over the past few years, we have been conducting our research fellowship programs for students from around the world that have completed projects in a variety of different themes and have presented those at international conferences. However, what we found is that many of the students do not have the opportunity to complete a project to a high enough standard to be able to present at a focused topic. So if you have a conference, typically that conference can be about bioinformatics, it could be about oncology, it could be about infectious diseases. And so in those niche topics, there are already experts that kind of discuss the topic in a very advanced way. And so students don't really have that many opportunities to have the whole process guided for them and have the opportunity to present and get feedback from high quality judges, from high quality experts. I mean, I don't know how many of you have already been in poster presentations, but so many times you put in so much effort into your poster, you come to a conference and there's not really a lot of feedback, at least not a lot of feedback that is constructive, that is addressing the specific question that you have. And so that is really why we designed this Omics Research Symposium. We hope that this is going to be an event that will continue to, that we will continue to use to bring together experts that understand the challenges of bioinformatics education. And so what that means is that they understand how bioinformatics is changing. It's a very dynamic field because of the new data types, because of the new methods, because of the pandemic, because of the people, right? There's many factors at play. They also understand that students need a system. They need a system to follow. They need a program that they can complete. And then they need to have an outcome. And that means that they need an opportunity with jobs, with research labs, with a place where they can effectively apply what they have learned to make a difference. They want to make a difference in the world using the skills that they have. And so that's why we also are going to use this as an opportunity to discuss with universities, colleges, high schools, how can they utilize effective resources for training and education in bioinformatics. And because we have so many participants, we're going to also have some prizes that I will talk about in just a few moments. So what are we going to cover in this symposium? First of all, how can you get noticed in this community? I think that many students that are learning bioinformatics or even using bioinformatics are not having enough opportunities to really stand out. And what does standing out really mean? That means that you have the right skills, you have something to show for what you've done, and you really can have a recognition that is certified from experts, from industry leaders that can say, yes, this is indeed an interesting topic, you've done a good job, this is what we think about it, right? So that is what is lacking, and we're going to address that. Number two, we're going to have an opportunity for you as students or faculty discuss the challenges for universities. I think universities are facing a lot of challenges in placing their graduates in the right jobs and the right labs, helping them connect the dots. A lot of that process is frustrating to a lot of people. And so that when something is frustrating, we need to address that. So we need to have effective training, effective outcomes, and we want to connect the dots. Now, number three is, where is bioinformatics headed? So bioinformatics is a field that has undergone a tremendous change in the past decade. What that means is that what you're learning today is not what's going to be needed in the next 5 or 10 years. And so how do you prepare for the future? How do you acquire the skills that are not just for a technology that is fading, that's going to become irrelevant in 5 years, but how do you acquire skills that are really needed? And so that's why we divided this whole symposium into two parts. The first part is going to be on the changing role of bioinformatics in research, industry, and education. So we'll talk about how the pandemic, for example, made sharing of omics data and made analysis of this shared data much more accessible to a wider range of people. It's not just about bioinformaticians anymore. Clinicians, people in biotechnology, students, citizen scientists, everybody is using bioinformatics and data analysis to investigate complex questions, like the question that everybody is thinking about. What is the origin of this pandemic, and where is it going? How is it going to continue to evolve? And what can we do about it? This has become, from a niche area of research just in a few labs around the world, now a topic that is widely discussed in the public media. It's on TV, it's on the radio, it's in everywhere we go. And so that means that the role of bioinformatics in our societies is changing. This is not anymore a niche domain that only a few people, the initiated ones, the experts, can participate in, but also that changes the role of those experts. How do they, from being experts in one particular specific type of data or a method, become leaders for a wider community that is passionate and interested in applying the same tools to a wide variety of different challenges, right? So you all of a sudden, what is the difference between being a leader and being a researcher focused on that niche, narrow question? So those are all the topics that we're going to discuss, and we're going to highlight some of these important techniques, technologies, and systems that are being put together to help address some of these gaps. What are they? Artificial intelligence and machine learning, obviously, cheap genomic and all kinds of omics data, the integration of multi-omics data that is becoming a pressing need, user-friendly tools for non-bioinformaticians to get involved, and advanced technologies like quantum computing, for example. So those are some of the things that we will address in day one. In day two, we will talk about how anyone can get involved and make an impact. So how can you, as a student, maybe in high school, maybe undergraduate, just learning about biotechnology, or maybe pursuing a medical degree, how can you get involved in the dry lab and make an impact? And how can you actually contribute to finding solutions and making progress in these important topics? So this is in day two. Now, in the conclusion part of it, we will introduce you to some experts who are mentors and judges, and will help us discuss important topics in both of these domains, and also provide you with some expert feedback on some of the top poster presentations. Now, this is just some of them, but I will later on pass it on to Dr. Mohit Mazumdar to introduce a lot of the other panelists towards the end of today's session. But here's what I would like you to think about as we prepare for the symposium, and as today we're going to be thinking about how to make the most out of the poster presentation session. So we will have questions for the panel that you can now start thinking about and share with us, so that we can pose these questions to the experts in the field. For those that are going to come from academia, you can ask questions like, what skills are needed to get hired as a fresher, beginner, or expert, right? So you get hired in industry, you get hired in academia, right? You want to work in a lab, and you want to understand what kinds of skills are needed, how to ask the right question, how to analyze complex data, how to do data visualization, how to work with others who might not have the same expertise as you do, right? These are all important skills in academia. What are some topics a student needs to learn about to join research, right? When you think, I want to become a research in, let's say, infectious disease in the academia, what do you need to know to be able to participate in that kind of research? How to approach a PI to get into a lab? Can undergraduate students join real research projects, right? Or is this just for PhD students and postdocs? So those are some questions. Again, we're looking for more questions. Please submit those questions in today's chat. We're really looking to you to help you get those questions answered from the expert panels. Now, again, the same questions can go for industry, right? Industry has a different set of needs, a different set of challenges. And so it's good to know what essential skills are needed to get hired. How can a student learn about joining industry, right? It's very different from academia. So what is the path to get there? What positions in industry we'll see hiring in the next few years, right? Maybe you're graduating soon. maybe you are graduating now, you want to know in the next 5 years, how do I get hired? How do I know that I'm going to have a job? And how can students find internships with industry? I think another important topic, because obviously you don't just go from graduating to all of a sudden having the right job. You want to explore what kind of positions, what kind of skills, what kinds of interesting questions are being addressed by the industry. Now, we will also have specific experts in different domains like oncology, infectious diseases, astrobiology, and others. And so for those, we also have some specific questions, but we are looking for more. What are some of the hottest trends where bioinformatics is needed in oncology? I mean, we know about immunotherapy, we know about precision medicine. What are some of the other coming up and hot topics that people need to think about? Should students pursuing medical degrees learn bioinformatics, right? So if you are interested in oncology and precision medicine, perhaps you're looking to acquire a medical degree. I mean, should you even be concerned about bioinformatics? Is that going to be a requirement for the doctors of the 21st century? How can a student work on clinical data to understand projects, right? So in the clinic, in the hospital, is a very different setting from when you take these projects from the public domain and from research. And so how can a student really experience that hands-on without kind of violating the different rules and regulations around clinical data? And what are some of the changes taking place in oncology, right? Where is it going? How is the future look? And what is the data going to look like in the next few years? So the same thing about infectious diseases. And we just put together some examples here. Obviously, we can expand this list. So how has the pandemic changed genomics in infectious diseases, right? Obviously, it has become much cheaper, much more affordable, much more easy to acquire and find public domain data. A lot of the methods for analyzing the data have become publicly available as well. So how have all of these trends changed the area of infectious diseases? And then what is the role of bioinformatics in public health? A lot of students that are interested in infectious diseases are interested in public health, and bioinformatics traditionally has not been part of the public health curriculum, even though biostatistics obviously has. So what is the difference between biostatistics, bioinformatics, and do they actually talk to each other in some way? And then we will have some hot new topics, I think very interesting developments with astrobiology, space travel, living on Mars, searching for life. Right, there are many interesting topics, and so we hope that we can address some of those questions as well. You know, how do you get started? I mean, do you have to work for NASA to be able to get started, or can you just start from the comfort of your own home? Finally, in all of these topics, in industry, in academia, in these different domains, we are going to have some prizes for best posters and presentations. So let me pause right here and let me ask you, how many of you that are here today with us are planning to have a poster presentation? Okay, so if you do have a poster presentation, please put one in the chat box. Okay, so put in number 1. All right, excellent. Okay, I'll just give it a couple of minutes for all of you to say, okay, so if you're planning to have a poster presentation, before we move on, I'm going to switch over to my screen over here, and I'm going to ask you to do the following. So this is the link to the Omics Logic Symposium, okay? If you're going to put number 1, we're going to, okay, thank you, Ajasvi. We're going to be monitoring all of your answers, and we're actually going to be following up, because our objective today is to help you present and win the prize, right? We hope that some of you are going to win these prizes. I'll tell you about the prizes in just a few moments, but I want to first take a look at this page. Okay, and you will see here the registration form. So you have to submit your level of education, where you're from, and then here you have 2 options: listener registration, which is free, or right here, poster competition. So poster competition comes with a registration price. I'll talk about that. There are also some waivers for the price for the price for the poster, but it's important to know that you have these 2 options, and you have to submit the right option when you register for the symposium. After you see all the different speakers and you have here a complete schedule for the symposium, you will see here some of the challenges that we're going to be addressing. And right at the bottom, you have an option to submit your research poster. So again, right here, you can give a project title and submit a project abstract. Okay, this is just your abstract. You will get a review of your abstract, and thank you, Ojasvi, for posting the complete form. So the complete form is separately available as well. But what is important is that right when you submit, you will get some feedback from our team who's going to review all of the abstracts and will give you some feedback, whether your poster qualifies for the competition and for the poster presentation, and some pointers to address, some topics to address before you actually submit the full thing. Okay, so important, there's a process. First you register, you submit, you get feedback, address that feedback. Okay, very important. The deadline is going to be on Monday, next Monday. So you still have all of your weekend that's coming up. So today is Wednesday, so you almost have 4 or 5 days to complete that. And today, in the next few hours, we're going to be, yes, there's going to be an attendance certificate for the symposium for both of the days. There's going to be some additional workshop opportunities before and after the symposium. Okay, great. So that is about the submission process. Now, for those of you that are actually going to be interested in participating, you can check, please, because I know that people are from different countries, please check the schedule. Okay, so here we have the schedule. Maybe, Ojasvi, you can paste the link for that as well. The schedule will start very early US time to accommodate some of the international participants. We have excellent speakers in all of the sessions. Some of them are still being finalized, but you will find here all of the information about the speakers, some amazing experts with very important topics in the domain in bioinformatics. And you will see some breakout sessions. And so when you're thinking about the symposium, please plan out to be there, to be on time, to make sure that you have registered for the appropriate session, and to make sure that you have added, Ojasvi, please paste the link to the schedule here. Okay, so if you can make sure that you're there, you have registered correctly for the type of breakout session. And so please make sure that marketing at PineBio and marketing at omicslogic.com are in your contact list so that you're getting the notifications. We're going to be sending all of this information by email to those of you that have registered. Again, if you just want to be a listener, it is free. For those of you that want to submit a poster and participate in the competition, there's a very modest registration fee. This is for us to help with covering the costs of the symposium. And we want to make sure that you have the right information. Now, some of you, yes, so Anushka, we will send out follow-up emails. And the emails are going to be coming from marketing at PineBio and marketing at OmicsLogic. So it's very important to keep those in your contact list. Okay, so where is this going? Why symposium? Why the poster? Is it just going to be a one-time event, or can you do more with your project? So we recommend for all of you that are planning to present to actually follow a very defined process that we've defined on the OmicsLogic Learn portal. You can essentially do all of the steps as a participant of our research fellowship program. I know that not all of you are participants, so this is something that you can consider in the future, because to make a lasting impact from your project, you don't want that project to just go away. And there's a way to submit a project. I'm sure that Dr. Harpreet will speak about this, and have this featured on our portal so that industry and academia and people in our network are aware of you and aware of your project. And so you can see right here some of the examples of projects that are going to be a part of the competition. Pragati, I see that you've raised your hand. If you could hold off just a couple more minutes. And if you have a question, you can put that in chat and our team will answer that. Okay, so that is another link. So if you want to kind of go for this longer term, we have some opportunities for you there, but also just briefly, I want to show you where you can complete the registration for the full symposium and the poster presentation. Okay, so here we have a program called Omics Research Symposium. You will find here information being filled out for the next few days until the end of this week. And you'll see how we have some options for you to get registered for the competition. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so now I want to briefly tell you about the prizes, right? How do you, what are you going to be competing against? What are some of the criteria? What are some of the things that the judges are going to be looking for? So as you know, your poster is going to have several different sections. It's going to have an introduction, methods and results, and discussion or conclusion. So for each one of those, there's going to be a point system to get feedback. And so this feedback is going to come with some additional notes. So first of all, we're going to look at the introduction, right? The introduction will be graded by having great, exciting ideas, strong rationale, great hypothesis, right? So refining your question is a very critical part of making an impactful project. Number two, you will have methods and results. So we're looking for very clear interpretation, visually clear, logically connected, important findings, innovative techniques, and strong statistics. So it needs to have significance, right? It has to have significance, and it has to have strong results. And then number three, discussion and conclusion. You need to have something that leads to a need of further research. We're sure that these posters are going to be great, but typically a poster is a beginning of a project, not the end of the project. So in your objective of getting to this part, you actually want to be able to get feedback from experts so that you can take your research further and eventually publish, right? In publication with peer review, that's really where you want to be. But in this opportunity, you want to get feedback to refine all of this. So don't worry about winning the prize necessarily. Even if you won't win the prize, you will get feedback about how you can go further with this project. And then finally, presentation quality. So it not only has to be scientifically sound, but it's very important to make it look nice, to make it presentable, to make it clear, to make your graphics clear. And so that is what we will talk about in the next few minutes. Again, register to participate. Make sure that you're applying for a poster competition. We will have prizes and we will have a best high school, best college, and citizen research projects. Okay, so we have several different categories. All right, so now let me pass it on to Dr. Harpreet Kaur. Dr. Harpreet Kaur herself has a PhD in bioinformatics from the Bioinformatics Center, CSIR Institute of Microbial Technology from Chandigarh, India, and JNU, New Delhi, India. Her PhD is in the domain of biomarker discovery for liver cancer, specifically computer-aided identification of genetic biomarkers of the diagnosis and prognosis of liver cancer. She has completed her master's with honors in molecular biology and biochemistry from the GNDU Amritsar, Punjab in India, and her core expertise in cancer biomarker discovery using machine learning techniques. Now, what's important is that she has expertise in application of statistical and machine learning techniques on biomedical data. She has over 8 years of research experience and over a year of teaching experience. She has published 19 research articles in peer-reviewed international journals with nearly 400 citations and presented 2 of her research papers in the international conferences. She has also received the Young Investigator Full Bursary Award 2020 from the European Association for the Study of the Liver and Young Researcher Award in 2020 from the Institutes of Scholars, INSC. She is, one second, she is a member of various scientific societies. And what's important is that she has already mentored over 15 research fellows just in the time that she has been working here with Pine Biotech. So I'm really excited to hear her perspective. She's got the experience and she has gone through the same process yourself that you yourself are facing. And so Dr. Harpreet, I will pass it on to you to share some guidance on how to complete an impactful research project.
Thank you, Ilya, for the introduction. Now, let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. So before we start working on like how we should design or how we finally submit our research proposal in any conference or anywhere in as a public in the form of publication. So first thing, let's understand what are the key steps to design a research project. So first of all, once you have a clear research idea, so based on that, you need to design or frame your research question. So next, you need to understand what has been already done in a specific area and what are the important loopholes that needs to be addressed. So then you need to go through the literature review process to understand those loopholes. So you already try to understand what are the already important publication that is associated with your research question. So subsequently, you collect the raw data that needs to be needed to be addressed your research questions. So once you have your data, next you need to pre-process your data and you need to explore the data to understand what are the important patterns within your data. Subsequently, you can perform various in-depth analysis to derive a biological significance from the data. Finally, you summarize your results in a form of a research report or a publication. So usually a research project starts with a very basic idea. So this idea then goes through a process of refinement as you dig deeper into a problem and try to narrow down the research question and try to find the evidence for the answer and fill in the gap to reach a particular conclusion. So you must be able to frame your research problem. Thus, finding a research topic that you are truly interested is the key step. Then to define your problem statement is necessary to perform literature review to find a good focus of your study. So as you start exploring the topic, you start making notes of the hypothesis, questions, and the data sets. Many important questions in the biomedical domain have led to the development of various databases to support different studies where already primary data is reanalyzed. So next is finding the gap in the literature. When you find something of interest, something that you can translate into a formal research problem statement, that would be your research topic. Now, let's look at where you can actually go to the review literature for associated study and how you can find important publications. So one of the important resources from where you can find associated studies related with your specific research question is PubMed. And of course, I'm also going to demonstrate to you how you can create a specific query on the PubMed. Then apart from the PubMed, you can also search on Google Scholar or ResearchGate. Now let's look at the major resources from where you can find various types of omics data, and you can understand like what type of data is available. So there are a number of the common repositories available on NCBI like GEO, SRN, the bioproject. So the GEO usually it is, or in general what we called it as gene expression omnibus. It maintains both processed raw as well as metadata for the samples. Then there is SRA, which is Sequence Read Archive. So mainly it maintains raw sequencing data. Then you have another common repository, which is Bioproject. So Bioproject maintains both metadata, links for the processed as well as the raw data. So besides these common repositories, now there are some specific repositories based on different disease conditions. For example, if you're interested in oncology, you will find number of the dedicated repositories that maintain multi-omics data for cancer patients. So various public repositories like TCGA, particularly GDC data portal, Then Array Express, Firebrowse are the other common repositories where you can find multi-omics data. Then Cosmic maintains mainly mutation data for number of thousands of cancer patients. So then if you're if you're interested in a virology, then there is a dedicated repository, that is NCBI virus, from where you can obtain various types of data, particularly for the different viruses. So here you will find protein as well as nucleotide data. Apart from that, you will also get the metadata for those samples. So once you have your data, before performing in-depth data analysis, first of all, always perform the exploratory data analysis to understand what are the important patterns within your data, and maybe what are the outliers in my data that I need to remove before going to perform in-depth analysis. So always take time to explore the data, make sure that you understand what kind of variations are present. Then structuring the data before the analysis can solve many complications, particularly technical issues you will able to resolve if you properly structure your data. So once your data is ready, now you can perform in-depth analysis, focusing on a problem and with assurance that you will find biological signals and not the technical noises. Now let's do the hands-on and let's see first of all how we can find data from the public repository. But before that, how we can perform proper literature review process. So let me take you to the PubMed and how we can create a specific query. So for example, if we are interested in SARS-CoV-2, so what we can do, we can actually create our specific query. So on the PubMed, if you just create us, give us some specific keyword, you can create your query. For example, if I just search SARS-CoV-2, right? So now we have. So right now I had actually selected this. I need to clear all the filters. So for example, if we just use one keyword, that is SARS-CoV-2, we get nearly 2,200 publications because SARS-CoV-2 is very recent one. So we got just 2,000. But many a times when your question is like related to some very old disease condition or any very old research area. So in that perspective, you will get thousands or lakhs of the results. So it is not possible to go through each and every publication to understand what is already done. So what should be the right approach to design research question as well as to do proper literature review? So what we need to do, you will find here one option, that is advanced option. You just need to click on here. Now what you need to do, here you can create actually specific queries. For example, SARS-CoV-2. So this is my first keyword. And of course, on the left side, you will find this option all fields. What you need to choose. So always try to keep it minimum. So we can choose title and abstract. So this keyword must be present in my title and abstract. So then if I more than one query, I just want to create my specific query. For example, I am also interested to study host response. Right, so we have we want to analyze or want to understand what is host response with the relation to the SARS-CoV-2, right? So in relation to the SARS-CoV-2, so I'm also using another keyword, that is host response. Then maybe you are interested a particular data types, like if you want to look at transcriptomic signature, proteomic signatures, or maybe you are looking at host response in terms of some metabolites, right? So right now, for example, I am interested in transcriptomics. So I just want these keywords must be present there. So then you can go to search. So with this particular query, now we are left with nearly 6 results, right? So now out of this, always try to find out, look at the important recent publications. And most importantly, if you're able to find literature review articles, because the review articles usually cover the broader perspective, but is already done in this area and what are the loopholes. So some of those things are usually discussed in the review. So always go through the review articles that associated with your specific research interest. So always read the recent review article which are published in good journals. So that is how we should find. Once you have like 5, 10 or something like that review articles, so then you can go through those review articles to understand what are the already done and what are the loopholes that needs to be addressed. So this is how we can do the literature review process. Now from the literature review, next, if you already find some or refine your research question, next to how we can find data from the public repository. So let me first take you to the NCBI. So here you can create your query simply for SARS-CoV-2. So here, so once you just created your query on NCBI, next what you need to do. So for example, it automatically give you the different perspective which is available on NCBI. First, for example, you can also get the directly reference genome sequence from here. And then here the important publication that associated with this keyword, and then under different data resources. So if you are looking for already processed data, particularly under the geo data set, you will get that link. So let me also show you. So it will take you to the geo where you already have processed data. And I will also go to this, like I will demonstrate to you how we can obtain a specific data set from this and how we can understand whether data is good or not, right? And another thing, if you are interested in raw sequencing data, sometimes you also need to do some other analysis with the raw data. So you can also take the raw data from under the genome option. Particularly raw data would be available under the SRA and as well as some of the bioprojects that are associated with this keyword. So for example, let me show you no SRA. And similarly, this is bioproject. Right, so this is SRA where you can find actually raw data associated with your specific keyword or specific research question. Now you can download these data sets if you have very already you have memory, but otherwise you can also take the data in the form of SRA run table, and I am also going to show you that. So this is SRA where you can find already raw data at RNA-seq raw data. Then similarly, this is the bioproject. So what are the different bioprojects that associated with the SARS-CoV-2? So you can find different bioprojects and look into like what is already done. For example, if you are interested in a particular bioproject, whole genome sequencing of SARS-CoV-2 from COVID-19 patient from Estonia. So for example, let's look at what kind of data it is, what is project is about. So you can always go to directly one project. So you can understand what is already done. And more importantly, many a times you can also find the link to the data sets as well as the metadata links. So for example, for this project, so this is how you can actually go to the bioproject. So these are the different bioprojects. Then here you will have the links with the already raw data as well as the metadata, where you can go to the either SRA or the biosample. So you can take the data from here. Now, how to find us data or specific data from the geo? Now, let me okay, so let's go over geo again. So if you look at here, you have nearly 5,000 data sets. Obviously, no one can explore each and every data. So you need to apply some of the filters depending upon your research question, as well as depending upon what kind of data that you want to work on. So here the first filter, the basic filter that you can apply, for example, based on the organism, simply if you are interested in Homo sapiens, whether you are interested in mus musculus, so you can select a particular organism. So for example, let's click on this. So eventually, after applying the first filter, so you will be left with nearly 3,800 data sets. Still, these data sets are very large to explore. So what we can do, we can apply another filter criteria based on the data type or study design. So here under the study type, you will get this option that is customized. So from this, you can select a specific option. For example, if I am interested in expression profiling by high throughput sequencing, so I can select that specific data type. So I can unselect, for example, methylation is by default selected. So I'm doing unselecting this. Then you need to click on show. So then your selected option appear here. So next you just need to click on this. Now, finally, you left with nearly 193 data sets. I think if you're doing a bioinformatics research project, definitely you can explore this type of data. Another important thing, so you always set at the order. So because for the bioinformatics research project, if your study is based on very few number of samples, usually it is difficult to publish that work. So that is why it is important that you must have sufficient number of the samples, particularly if you want to publish your bioinformatics research project. So here at the top, you can always select a option. So you can sort your data set based on the number of samples, that is high to low. So which is I have already set by default. Now you need to go through these study to understand. First, you just need to look at at the topic, whether this study is relevant with your research question or not. Then second, of course, you need to look at number of the samples. So if you have good number of samples, at least for a bioinformatics research project, unless you have very novel questions, so it is always better if you consider at least 100 samples. Unless you are complete, your research question is complete, very novel, and that is like in that case you even have 10 or 20 samples, that is good enough to publish. But usually you must have good number of samples, especially from the publishing perspective. Now, for example, how to explore a data to understand whether a particular data is good or not. So what we need to do, we need to look at the data itself. Now, what are the important perspectives or aspects that we can explore? So for example, here, so we have, first we need to understand what kind of study is done. So in the title, usually they have like present that. For example, here we need to understand what is this study is about. So this is bulk RNA seq of SARS-CoV-2 infected human lung organoids. So then what is experimental type? So experiment type will provide you what kind of your input data. So it is, if it is expression profiling by high throughput sequencing, it means it's high throughput sequencing RNA-seq data. If your expression profiling by array, it means that is by microarray. So then the next thing, you need to go through the summary itself, like what this study is about or what this data is about. Then under the overall design, many a times authors actually provide you what kind of data they have and how many samples they have, like what kind of sample they are. Like here they have provided organoid generated from primary lung 82 cells were either transfected with SARS-CoV-2 or MOG. So this kind of question might be interesting. So then we need to understand what kind of information before downloading a data. We need to understand whether this data is good enough to address our research question or not. So how we can do that? First thing, always read about the original publication. But before going into the publication, just explore your data at itself here. For example, here, you need to click on one sample. So here under the characteristics, usually authors provide you what kind of metadata they have associated with these samples, right? So under the characteristics, you will find like what kind of information we have. So for example, here the data was taken from lung organoids, and this is infected or not infected, right? Infected with SARS-CoV-2 or simply mock samples. So then how this data was processed, and this is very important. Whenever you're taking any data, you must know about that, how my data was actually pre-processed, right? How this data was processed. So here under the data processing, you all authors always provide you that information. For example, here they have explained raw reads were aligned using star aligner. Then what was which genome was used? So like GRCH38, which is HC19. So then how they quantify the gene expression, and then what kind of information you have in your supplementary data. So supplementary data, so they have count values and TPM values, right? So once we from the going into the data, we understand maybe this data looks interesting. So now I can explore this data. The next thing, how to download or which particular file we need to download. So here for the RNA-seq data, under the supplementary file, usually already processed data is available. So if it is the RNA-seq data, you need to download these supplementary files. For example, here we have TPM CSV files and count values on CSV files. So I had already downloaded these files. And then where the meta, for example, when I was looking at one sample, right? So I know that what kind of information I have for this particular data. So this is for one sample. So how, from where we can obtain information for all the samples. So here under the download family, you will find this file series matrix. So this series matrix file contains the metadata information. Now, if when you actually directed to the series matrix again, you have GSC and 2 GPL. GPL is platform files. So now you need to look like which series matrix or which series matrix is useful for you. Now, if you look at these GPL platforms, so you have one Illumina Nova 6, 6000. This is for Homo sapiens. Other one, this particular platform for both. That is Homo sapiens as well as SARS-CoV-2. So always you need to look at what kind of metadata I needed, right? And once to you looks like data is good, now maybe I can explore this. But before exploring and performing any analysis, always go through the publication that was associated or that is associated with this data set. So under the citation, you will find the link to that publication, for example, here. So you need to go through the original publication and need to see what is already done in the literature with this data. So because you can't ask the same question from the data which is already addressed, right? So you need to make sure what your question is novel, because the novel question must be based on the other characteristics or other metadata information you have. So once you have downloaded your data, now let me show you what kind of data we obtained after downloading. And another, this is like already processed data, right? Now, if you're interested in the raw data, so where you can find links for sometimes you need another important information. So from where you can obtain that particular data. So under this relation, you will find the link to the raw data. For example, here SRA, let me take you to the SRA data, which is raw data. Now, let me show you how we can download this SRA data. Now, this SRA is important point that you need to remember. So this SRA data is useful when you do want to do different types of analysis with your data, which information is not already available in the process data. And sometimes you are not like, you want to do your own analysis, right? So in that case, you need to download this raw data. But if you're downloading these files, look at these size of these files. It's like 3.9 GB, 4 GB, like 3.8 GB, 3.9 GB. So if you, right now we have like even a 10 samples. So on an average, at least to download this data, I need 4 GB space. But to handle this kind of thing, we can also do or download SRA run table. And this SRA run table is very useful when you doing analysis on our one of the server, T-Banfo server. And I am also going to show you today, demonstrate to you how we can use or take raw data, right? So here to download this data in a simple or very small size file as a SRA run table, first we need to select this file. Then under the format, instead of the summary, here we need to select run info. Then we need to create this file. Now let me show you what this file contains. And this is very like, it's few KB files. So this is what SRA run table, and you can directly submit this SRA run table on T-Banfo server. So this is the table that you needed, and you just need to save this file instead of Excel or CSV. Just save this as TXT format, that is a tab separated format, right? So you need to save this file into TXT format. Now let me show you. So this is already for the raw data, right? So now let me also show you how we can use this raw data to process any RNA-seq pipeline. So let me take you to the server. So just give me a second. And let me save this file into a TXT file. So on the server, so let me share this link as well with you. So this is T-Banfo server link. So here you can actually use both processed as well as raw data, just in case, because sometimes if you have 100 samples, so for this file, even if you have 100 or 200 samples, so you need at least 400 GB, 800 GB space, right? And many a times our system cannot handle such kind of data. So for those purpose and to tackle those issues, so this T-Banfo server is very useful. So here what you need to do. So for example, this is NGS data. From this, you need to select reference genome. So by default, so then these are the FASTQ files. Then these are, what is this organism? That is Homo sapiens. So I'm using latest human genome reference genome. So then we need to look at whether these are single end files or the pair end files. So in our file, we can check whether these are single end or pair end files. So these are the single end data. So here we can select this single end data. So then we need to upload our file. So now here we can actually directly upload this NCBI run table. So we need not to download FASTQ files on our system directly. What we can do, we can directly use this simple SRA run table, which is just few KB. So it is just a 5 KB. Otherwise, you need like, it might be the 10 KB, 20 KB, depending upon if you have 100 or 200 samples. So we can use directly this SRA run table. We need not to download all the samples. So here we can cancel the group. Right now, if then we can do start. And here we are just running RNA-seq, simple RNA-seq pipeline. So then we can do PCR clean to remove any PCR duplicates, then Trim-O-Matic, which will remove any adapters. So then we can, once our reads we get clean reads, next we can map or align our reads on reference genome. So then we can quantify gene expression using a quantification algorithm. As we have used Butai 2T algorithm for mapping, then we can use RSCM algorithm. From here, you can select whether you want FPKM value, whether you wanted expected count or TPM value. So you can select that, and then you can end the pipeline. So then once you had end this pipeline, so this is simple RNA-seq pipeline, right? So once you run this pipeline, now what kind of output that you will obtain? So the outputs that you can obtain, now depending upon, so let me show you, like this is TPM file. So which this TPM file is right now, we already taken this file directly from Geo, but at the end of running the pipeline, you will get this TPM file. So now this TPM or FPKM or RPKM file, depending upon what kind of data that you are using. So I have pasted this in Excel. So here we have ID, that is gene ID or sometimes gene symbol. So then in the columns, we have samples. And these in the cells, these values represent the expression label, right? Now, once we have this gene expression label, so we have clear gene expression table. So similarly, another thing that we obtained from our Geo data, that is metadata. So this is series matrix file. So this series matrix file will provide you information regarding what are these samples and what kind of characteristics you have in the data. So you will get information here itself. So under the characteristics, if you look at, as I already told you, so these are the important column rows, which actually represent what kind of samples you have. So here you have, for example, you know that this is my ID, so corresponding to whether it is mock sample or not. So this is how first we need to prepare our data properly. So then we can name these samples. Exactly, these are the mock samples and which are COVID samples. Now, how we can use this table to perform various types of analysis. So once you have clear gene expression table, before performing any analysis, always the first analysis that you should go for, that is exploratory data analysis. So usually exploratory data analysis method help you to understand what kind of pattern within your data and what is the variability represented by different components. So one of the exploratory data analysis method is principal component analysis. Now let me show you how we can perform exploratory data analysis. So what I can do, I can take this data and save this into a TXT file. So which is I already done. So the next is how I can use that particular data. So I can, so this is simple table that I can save into a TXT file. So how we can use this particular information? Now let me take you to the server again. So I have just taken that particular table, and next I'm going to perform simple exploratory data analysis using PCA. PCA, which is principal component analysis, and principal component analysis is also a dimensionality reduction method. So here under the utility section, so what we need to do, first we need to, under the data mining section, so you will find this module utilities. So here you need to provide that file. So here I can upload now complete table. So if I already have a table, so let me just upload this table. So this is GSE TPM table. And of course, before performing any, so right now my file is getting loaded here. An important point to remember, to perform machine learning or any statistical analysis, our data must be normalized. So right now we have FPKM or TPM values, right? So TPM values in our data. So next, what we need to do, the first thing we should perform normalization. So here by clicking on the start, I'm going to start my first pipeline. So first of all, I'm going to perform quantile normalization. So here in the quantile normalization, first of all, we transforming a data into log scale. So why we actually changing or transforming a data into the log scale? Usually, if you look at this data, so here, this is TPM values. So for example, here you have 0 values, 1 values, then you also have 165, 164 values, right? So this is very wide range. So that is why first thing we need to perform always log scale transformation, so that we able to normalize our data before applying any statistical or machine learning method. So I'm going to perform quantile normalization, yes, and threshold I am selecting to perform quantile normalization, that is 5. So then the next option which is automatically get highlighted here, that is PCA. So this is one of exploratory data analysis method, and we also call this method as dimensionality reduction method. Now here I'm selecting by default option. So first it is asking whether you want to transform these table or not. So we already transformed our table into log scale, so we do not need. And whether you want to filter out, here you can also apply filters. If you want to filter out very low value, so you can apply that as well. Then the method for the PCA, which is working, that is SVD2. So then it is asking whether you also want to standardize your columns and the row. So we are choosing all the by default option. Yes, we are doing that here. And then we can end our pipeline. So this is GSE PCA. And this pipeline, depending upon the size of the data, usually take 5 to 10 minutes, not more than that. But I had already run this pipeline. Let me share its link with you. Just give me a second. So just give me a second. So I had already link of the completed pipeline. So now I need to understand what output that I obtain. So here you got two outputs. Although this is zip folder for all the outputs. So this is the main two outputs. The one is PCA result. The second one is normalized TXT file. If you remember, before performing PCA, we also perform quantile normalization. So you can always download, you should download this file, because many a times you need to perform various other machine learning or maybe statistical analysis on your data. So you should use this normalized data. And right now I had already downloaded this PCA result, and then I had pasted it into an Excel. Now these are my PCA results. So now what these PCA results represent, because this is very important. Now first, if you look at this, these results, what we got out of this, here we have in the first column, we have the sample ID. So it is like we can use. So then in the columns, if you look at, you have some percentage. Now what is this percentage? So this percentage represent variability represented by each component. So here each feature. So this is one feature, feature 1, feature 2, feature 3. So these are the new features which we have obtained from the PCA. So and these features are known as principal components. So what principal component does? So it compress your data. So it compress your gene expressions or genes into new features. And for example, initially we have nearly 60,000 features. So then it compressed those 60,000 features to generate these 10 or 9 or 10 new features. And each feature here represents some variability of the data. For example, always the first component or the first feature of the PCA represents maximum variability of your data, followed by other components in a decreasing order. Now, how this information can be useful to visualize or understand different patterns within our data. For example, we can draw simple scatter plot based on this PCA. So I'm considering PC1 and PC2. Overall, it represents nearly 46% variability in my data. So I'm considering both of these components as they represent nearly 46% variability. So then I need to take these and then I can draw simple scatter plot. So this is the scatter plot I got, right? After, so this is x-axis. Now, some of the things that I need to do. So here, so we can remove these grid lines and we can also provide x-axis title. And y-axis title so that there should not be any confusion. So our x-axis in this data was PC1. So that is principal component 1. So this was PC1 and it represents nearly 26.43 variability in our data. Then this is PC2, which represents 19.43% variability in our data. Next is, right now we don't know which sample belong to which particular class, right? So the next is labeling of these samples. So how we can do that and understand what are these samples, I mean in different classes, right? We need to understand that. So what we can do, if you just select and then do right click, go to the select data. Here you can add information regarding each of these samples. Now we have COVID samples and we have mock samples. Again, within the COVID. So let's first simply create COVID. So these are COVID infected samples, right? For COVID infected, what are our x-axis? This is our x-axis. And then for y-axis, for the COVID sample, this is PC2 is y-axis. Then the next samples that we have, those are the mock samples. So we can name. Then for the mock samples, what is our x-axis values? Then what is our y-axis value? So then as we already defined classes of all the samples, now we can remove any extra outliers. So now we can remove this series. Now we can end this. Now we have, based on our data, based on the PCA, what we understand. So we have COVID samples on the left side, all the COVID samples, and mock samples on the right side. But one of the mock sample looks like an outlier, right? Even within these COVID and mock sample, again, we have two groups, which is at the upper part and lower part, similarly here. So now you can also look at what kind of actually data you have. Even within your data, you have other metadata information, like these are maybe two different replicates. So these are two different samples for two different replicates. So you can actually find that pattern as well. Now, what we can do with this exploratory data analysis? Now we can ask our downstream analysis. Now, what kind of research questions we can ask? So might we can ask simply, we want to identify differentially expressed or significant genes between or significant signature between mock and COVID-19. You can also within these two sample subtypes. So you can ask different questions. So the first, and another thing, before performing a downstream analysis, you need to remove your outliers. So first we need to identify what is these outliers. For example, this looks like an outlier. So you need to, sorry, if you just locate it, this value is -41141. So where is this value? This is 141. So this is the mock sample, and this is, if I want, I can remove this as well. So if I'm looking at this, this is 1652, and so this is 162. So this is how we can identify outliers. So we can remove outliers from our data for downstream analysis. So this is how exploratory data analysis help us to design or refine our further research questions, right? Now, other outputs that we obtained from this geo data. So here we also have read count values. So I have also downloaded these count values. Particularly, these read count values are very useful. These read count values are very useful when you want to perform differential gene expression analysis, particularly using DSEQ or HR. So now we can actually use this particular data as well. Now I have read count values. So first thing I need to do from my read count data, I need to remove these outliers. So I have, these are the count values. So I already, once I located what are the outliers, now we can delete or remove those outliers from our data. Then we can perform differential gene expression analysis to understand what are the important genes or significant genes between these two classes, right? Now let me show you how we can perform differential gene expression analysis. So after I have deleted these genes, then what I did, I have removed those outlier sample, and I prepared my new matrix with the read count data. Now then I'm going to use that read count after removing the outliers for differential gene expression analysis to identify what are the genes that are getting upregulated over SARS-CoV-2 infection, and what are the genes which are getting downregulated after this SARS-CoV-2 infection in comparison to the mock samples, right? So now let me take you again on the server. So how we can perform differential gene expression analysis? You can do that in R as well. I mean, you can perform, if you already have normalized data that follow normal distribution, you can apply Welch or Wilcoxon t-test depending upon whether they are paired or unpaired samples. Or you can apply, if your data is not normalized, you have non-normal data like read count values. So then you can apply differential gene expression analysis using DSEQ or HR. So here under the data mining, you will also find this option. So now we are uploading our input file here. And of course, before uploading the file, always read the note. It is recommended to upload expression in the raw read count values, because there are some of the algorithm which works only on read count, on read count data. So like DSEQ and HR. So once our data get loaded, next we need to define groups as well. So right now my data is getting loaded. So now we need to define our groups, because we need to identify what are the upregulated or overexpressed genes after COVID-19 infection, or what are the downregulated genes or downregulated pathways. So what we need to do here, first we need to drag these samples into different groups. Always your group B is the group when you should be the condition that you want to analyze. So condition that I want to analyze, that is COVID-19, so COVID infected. So I am just dragging all the COVID samples into group B. Then mock samples here in the first group. And you always need to remember which are the samples you defined, group 1 or group 2, right? So then we can submit. So right now we can start our differential gene expression pipeline. So right now I'm using HR algorithm. to identify significantly differentially expressed genes. So you can also choose DSEC algorithm, DSEC2. So this is like both of these algorithms takes only raw read count values. So this is our HR pipeline. So again, this pipeline will take 10 minutes or so. So I had already run this pipeline. Let me share its link with you as well. So this is already completed pipeline. So here the output that you need to download, this is zip folder file you need to download. So from this, you will find one single file, which I already uploaded in the Excel file. Let me show you what kind of data we have or results that we have. So just give me a second. Let me. So this is the output that we obtained from HR pipeline. Now what we have here, so we have FDR, we have p-value, we have log CPM and log FC value. Now we need to understand which particular data or how we can identify significant genes and which are the columns that are the most important here. So right now I'm just highlighting the columns that are most important here for interpretation of the results. So I'm just highlighting them and let me tell you why. And here the FDR, the first column, we need to identify whether a particular gene is statistically differentially expressed or not, right? So we need to consider FDR values. So can anybody tell me like how much FDR is considered as statistically significant? So what should be the FDR value to consider a gene statistically significant? So does anyone have any idea? Okay, so FDR is less than or in general 5% or what we can say, yes, less than 0.05. Yes. So then we need to consider only those genes which are less than 0.05, right? So we can select that. And first we can also apply the filter criteria. We can apply filter here. So to identify only significant genes. So it should be less than 0.05. Right? So then you need to understand what are the genes that are getting upregulated or downregulated. So then the important criteria to consider that is log FC. So if log FC value is usually positive, that is upregulated. If it is negative, means downregulated. Again, in literature, that is fold chains, 1.5 is considered as a cutoff, right? So this is something that we need to understand when we doing this analysis. Particularly, this is how we can identify upregulated and the downregulated gene. So this is some of the analysis. So once you have the results, next, of course, you can perform pathway analysis. But before performing pathway analysis, you must filter out the genes. What are the significantly upregulated, significantly downregulated genes? Usually 1.5 fold chains, both in positive and the negative, is considered as standard criteria to identify upregulated and downregulated genes, right? So now, if you are interested to join, now let me go back to the presentation. Just give me a second. So let me share my presentation. So to facilitate our research fellows, we have designed a course on this, like designing a bioinformatics research project, where you can find 3 lessons. Particularly, first lesson is about finding the topic in literature review, then finding the data set, and then where you can understand this whole process. And then finally, how you can compile your results in the form of presentation. So if you're interested, you must complete these are the, if you're interested to complete a bioinformatics research project with us. So there are some of the common steps that you need to follow. Always, first of all, you complete your profile, then complete assigned courses based on your research. So mentor usually, our mentor assign you the courses based on your research interest. Then you need to also need to fill weekly progress form to give update and to get the comments on your project. Then you need to complete this particular coursework that I just explained you. So then once you had completed, finally you can submit your research proposal. So then how you can compile your results. And here, so some of the important things that you always need to consider before compiling your research, either in the form of publication or if you want to present it in any conference, you need to prepare your abstract. And usually your abstract is summary of your work. And here, the important 4 steps that you need to consider when you're writing your abstract. The first step is writing about the background or the introduction. Then what are the methods that you have used, and then what are the key results, and then finally what are the key conclusion and the discussion. So these are also the main steps when you're writing your manuscript. So you need to keep this mind, and usually your abstract is in like 250 words or 150 words. So accordingly you have to manage all these 4 sections. And now let me just give you an example of one of already abstract that are published in well-established journal like Journal of Hepatology. So here you can find all the sections. So this is like whenever you're submitting either in the paper or when you are submitting your conference presentation. So these are the sections: background and aims, and then methods, then results, then the key conclusions. So these are the main section that you need to define. So when you join your research program, so then you once you completed your all the courses in the course number 9, in the second lesson, at the end of the second lesson, after going or completing your literature review and finding the data set, you need to submit this project proposal form. So here you need to provide exactly what is your project title, then what is your possible hypothesis regarding your research, then what is the expected outcome, as well as what methodology that you're going to adopt. Then you need to provide links for the data sets as well as the reference publication based on which you have designed your question. So now I would like pass this session to Dr. Mohit Mazumdar. So over to you, Dr. Mohit Mazumdar.
Thank you, Dr. Preet. Let me share my screen, just a second. Okay. Hello, everyone. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Preet, for helping everyone with bioinformatics project and giving us a basic overview of project design and how to do literature review, look for data set, and then process the data using the pipelines. Thank you. So today I wanted to kind of introduce you to the topics that would be discussed in the webinar, and also the panel that will be helping and having discussion about these cutting edge topics in research in bioinformatics. So the Omics Research Symposium, this Omics Research Symposium will give you an opportunity to present and learn about important topics related to biomedical research, as well as the subscription to the symposium will allow you to learn about many of these important technologies and skill sets, and get feedback from academic and industry experts whom I'll be showing you in a couple of slides. Before I do that, these are some of the organizing and participating universities, companies who will be there in this conference. They will be discussing about either job opportunities or cutting edge programs that they've been doing, or the research that they are into, all of that. So this committee, as I was telling you, will have panel discussions. So we have eminent speakers and leaders in the field of bioinformatics, education and research. So in the panel discussion, we will cover the application of bioinformatics in medicine, biotechnology, clinical research, and pharmaceutical industry. And we will also discuss how changing landscape, how bioinformatics landscape is changing with AI and machine learning, and then simulations, and then multi-omics integration, new technologies for data generation and analysis. We will also discuss about infectious diseases and public health, COVID-19 pandemic and awareness. In biotechnology, we will be discussing also about the cutting edge oncology research. Someone was asking that question. So the panel discussion will have all of those components. And to tell you about each of these topics and speakers, so let's take a look at that, speakers and their topics. So we will start on 21st with a keynote speaker, Dr. GPS Raghava. And Dr. Raghava is head and professor in Department of Computational Biology, IIIT, and he will be talking about the future of bioinformatics, opportunity for data-driven biological research in India. And then in the segment where we will be discussing about India, that would be early US morning time, but the second talk would be at 5:45 a.m. and that would be by Professor Pallu Redana, and he will be discussing about industry-driven education in healthcare in India. And we have been working together on several biomedical aspects that Dr. Redana will also discuss. Next, we will have more specialized panel discussion and sessions. So that will start with our keynote speaker, Dr. Leonard Brodsky from Tauber Bioinformatics Research Center. He is the director of Tauber Bioinformatics Research Center, which is there in University of Haifa, Israel, and we'll be discussing about mathematical modeling for complex system biology. And that will be for, we will have also prominent speakers from universities such as Georgetown University, Dr. Sona Vasudevan. She will be discussing about her program on system medicine, computational biology for medical industry. And then we will also have a specialized topics, which is the cutting edge research which is going on by expert Julia Panoff. She will be discussing about single cell and single nuclei transcriptomics with cell population pseudodynamics. And then we have also our eminent speaker, Gus Kusulos from NIPE, and he will be discussing about the biomedical research through data and how computational biology is playing a key role in research and in academia. And then we will be having also Chris from Louisiana Biomedical Research Network, and he'll be discussing about the biomedical research and education for medical and graduate students. And then we also have a lot of industry speakers, including Dr. Shamir Kader, who will be discussing about pharma and AI and integration of omics data and clinical data. And he is one of the senior directors who is working and developing strategies in AstraZeneca, New York, and heading the data science, digital health, and bioinformatics departments there. So after that, we will be also discussing about different universities, cutting edge and programs in these different world-renowned universities, where the program director, Philip here, will be discussing about, Dr. Philip here will be discussing about undergraduate high school programs that they have in computational biology and how that is helping the students to develop research ideas at a very early stage. So the panel discussion, as I said, would be about academicians discussing about their programs, discussing about their research and the outcome of such collaborative omics logic training that are there partnered with many universities. And then we will have a panel discussion from industry, which will be about internships and job opportunities. There will be a chance to talk to industry experts that what they are looking for. We have also prepared some of the questions that Ilya just mentioned at the beginning, and we would want you to also put up your questions that you want to get answered from the experts. So some of the questions, as you can see on the screen, is how tech is changing healthcare. How is that relevant to the job opportunity in this field? What are the major trends in the industry driving data science and bioinformatics? What kind of skill sets or talents are more important for the company? What are some of the entrepreneurial opportunities in the industry? These are some of the questions that we have thought of, but we would welcome you to tell us the question that you wanted to ask from the panel that we have. So you can also learn about all of this in our schedule link. So maybe I can, maybe if someone, Ojasvi or Sonalika, can share the schedule link of the symposium that describes the panelists and the speakers in detail. So that is about the speakers and the symposium. And obviously, many of you would want to go through the free part and listen to the lectures. And many of you would be interested to learning by doing some of the hands-on that we did today. So you can start by doing registration for the symposium. That would also give you an opportunity to learn through the courses that we have put together and also participate in the poster competition. So to talk about more of that, and if you have any questions regarding registration, resources, please feel free to ask Ms. Sonalika, whom I'm passing next, to guide you through the registration process if you have any questions and the resources that would be associated with the registration. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohit. So before I talk about the registration process and also show you all about the courses and the programs that we have, I just wanted to quickly go ahead with launching a poll to know more about you all. So my poll is up now, and my first question is, what is your educational background? Are you a graduate, a postgraduate, a PhD, or a postdoc? And what is your designation? Are you a student, a researcher, or a faculty, or from administration? And my third question is, what is your research interest? Is it bioinformatics for infectious diseases, data science, genomics, transcriptomics, metagenomics, bioinformatics using R and Python, or precision medicine and cheminformatics? So I would be keeping the poll up for 30 seconds. I'm hoping for good responses from you all. Thank you. And by the time you all are filling up the poll, I just would want to know in the chat box if you all have completed your sign up on the Omics Logic Learn portal. And if not, then you can go along with me. I'll share the link with you all and sign up. Those who have completed the sign up, please let me know in the chat box by either typing in 1 or maybe yes. Here is the link. Thank you, Anushka. Thank you, Dr. Bashir. And those who have completed their sign up, they can make sure that they have updated their profile picture and also added on LinkedIn social accounts to their profile. So let me just show you what it looks like for an example. Please make sure that you all have an updated profile picture and also all your social accounts are linked, and also write a good bio about yourself. And I'm asking this out because we generally share your progress on our social. And to do so, we would require your social account link and also profile picture. Now, I think I should be ending the poll now. Let me give 10 more seconds to you all. Okay, thank you everyone. Now, there were a lot of questions in the chat box. You all were asking about different sorts of courses. Someone was asking about agri-bioinformatics or genomics or transcriptomics or metagenomics. So I'm sharing the link of our courses on the Omisogic Learn portal with you all. You all can create a free account on the portal and go through the various courses and the sample projects that we have on the portal. And to get the access to the start material on the portal, you can go ahead with taking the basic subscription that is of $10. And how do you take up that is that you go to the pricing module and just pick the starter package. And to mention, for Indians, we also have an alternative option of payment, either bank transfer or Google Pay and Paytm. And I'm mentioning this just because a lot of you want to participate and get the access to the courses or the programs, but you're not able to proceed with the international payment because your bank doesn't allow. So you have an alternative option as well. And I'll share the details with you. You can simply mail me at marketing@pine.bio. I would be also sharing the social links to our LinkedIn page and also our Facebook page. So it's important that you don't miss out on any of the important information or any of the important webinars and the sessions. So today's workshop, I think, was very useful for each one of you, because now what's happening is the latest trend is that a lot of people, those who were not even from the field of bioinformatics, they are much interested to carry out their projects in the field of bioinformatics, and they're getting stuck at some point. And such workshops are of great help, right? And those who agree with me, please let me know in the chat box. And also how this workshop helped you. I'll share a feedback form as well in the mail in which I'll share a recording with you. Please let us know. So let me just share the LinkedIn link as well. Thank you, Ujasvi, so much for sharing the LinkedIn link and the Facebook link as well. So we keep on updating our pages on LinkedIn and Facebook with all our upcoming events, our workshops, webinars. And now coming to the research symposium page. So let me just clarify the registration for the different sorts of events that we have. So the first thing is that you all can be free listeners, that just to come and listen to the great talks of our speakers who would be talking about different topics in their area of expertise. You can just join the symposium for free of cost and learn more about different fields. And also we would be having companies telling about what skill set they are looking for while recruiting candidates. So that would be also of a great help. And also what you should go ahead, like there are many people who are confused what field to pick after a particular bachelor's maybe, or after master's, which PhD to pick, either to go for PhD or not. Well, that's a very big doubt we have most of the times, where like whether to opt for a job directly after master's or PhD, what's the value and stuff. And we have a lot of career related questions, right? So Dr. Mohit has already asked that you can give us the questions that you would want to get answered, and we'll be here to answer each question of yours, be it for the panelists or be it for the career guidance experts, and we'll be here to help you out. Now, talking about the registration process, we have 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and we have just segregated these levels based on the participation type. So the first one is the free listener participation. They need not come to the registration page and register here. So they just have to fill out the registration form that is present on the Research Symposium page. I'll share the link with you all. But those who want a certificate for the symposium, they have to register here with $5. And you can do so with the beginner level option and use the coupon code that I would be sharing again in the mail with you all. And also the Indians, you all have an option of alternative bank transfer. So I'll share those options as well. And participants in Africa, you also have a pay stack option with you all. So I'll share the details of the pay stack option with you all of one of our team members in Africa. And then comes the poster presentation option that is of beginner 10 again. And then we would be having different sorts of workshops as well during the symposium and even later. So for now, for the symposium workshops, the $10 cost would also include those workshops amount. So what exactly the cost of the workshop is? It's $10, and it would include free poster submission for the Omics Research Symposium competition. That's one thing. Another thing is that you all would also get the access to the Omics Logic portal for the asynchronous training that I just told you, that you have to go to the pricing option on the portal and pick up the starter pack just to get the access to the start material in the courses. So you would be getting the access to all the start content in the lessons under the courses tab. And also you all would be getting 1 month access to the TBioInfo server, where you could carry out your different sorts of analysis by running out different pipelines, right? And then we would be having the workshops of the details we would be sharing soon. Now on the program page itself, you can have a look of what all workshops we are going to have. So we have 3 workshops in total before the symposium, just to prep you up all for the symposium. The first workshop was today, and I really enjoyed a lot. It was pretty good. I hope you all enjoyed too and learned a lot. And the second workshop would be on 17th of August, and that would be on computational biology for non-bioinformaticians, right? And then we have the third workshop that is more of a faculty workshop, where we would be discussing and learn more about designing a bioinformatics program to address the gaps in curriculum and prepare students for employment, right? So that would be more of a faculty development workshop. And then here on the program page itself, we have mentioned the event details of the symposium. Let me just share the link with you all. Thank you so much, Ujasvi. And now coming to the event page itself, which we have already discussed, and I just wanted to share the link so that you all know what's all going to happen. And it's not important that you be a part of each and every breakout room. You can simply go to the breakout room in the, if a speaker is talking about your area of interest, you can simply go to that breakout room, be a part of it, and listen to the talk of your interest. Right, it's not important that you have to be present in each and every breakout room. Obviously that won't be possible. And this is a very nice blog that we have collated for you all. Again, let me just share the link. And this blog has all the information about what all would be covered in our second workshop, that is on August 17th. And the time period would be the same for that workshop as well. That is 9 a.m. CST, 2 p.m. GMT, and 7:30 p.m. IST. And then finally talking about the research fellowship program, as I had few queries in the chat box, like Ilya also shared about our research fellowship program and told you how our research fellows have finished up great projects, and they would be presenting in the symposium as well. So those who are interested to carry out an independent research project with us, you all are most welcome to register yourself on the research fellowship program. And once you register yourself, we'll get back to you and take your application ahead. Also, those who are interested to go ahead with the scholarship for the research fellowship program, we provide partial scholarships for the program. You can definitely fill out the scholarship form. Here in the form, you have to fill out your CV, like upload your CV, and you have to give us 2 references from your institute, university, or organization, wherever you are exactly. And then we'll just have a word with your references and decide upon your scholarship. And on the research fellowship program page, I just wanted to mention that we have tried to answer each and every frequently asked question for you all, so that you have no doubt. So you can go through these frequently asked questions. And also we have mentioned what our steps would be towards carrying out an independent research project for you, right? How we would start, and then how we would be reaching to your project conclusion, and then concluding everything all together, and maybe going ahead to the publication, as many of our research fellows have already done and are going ahead with. And to get yourself registered, you have the form towards the end of the page, and this is the form you have to fill up, and then we'll get back to you. Now I would like to have the stage open for questions. So anyone, if you have any questions. I have a question from Faria. Okay. Okay, Faria, I've received your query and I'll get back to you on this on mail. Maybe this is not the right platform to discuss this. Okay, thank you, Faria. And others, if you have any doubts, please let me know. The feedback link would be in a mail that I would be sending you all out after this session, wherein I'll be sharing the recording of the workshop as well. And now let me just share my mail ID. Please make sure that you have this mail ID added to your address book so that you don't miss out on any of the important mails. And you can reach out to me at support@pine.bio. Dr. Pankaj, we'll share the feedback link in a mail that would be sent after this workshop ends, where I'll be sharing the recording of the workshop as well. And also, I would like to just quickly go through the programs. So we have, so the courses which I explained you, these are, no, you won't be getting a certificate for this workshop. We would be giving the certificates for the symposium, but not for the workshop. Thank you. So in the courses, we have the asynchronous material, which you can go ahead with at your own pace and complete and get the certification. And we have a 1 month or maybe 2 or 3 months as well online training programs where the mentor takes the sessions, and these programs are enlisted under the program section on the portal itself. So you can have a look here and pick the program that suits the best to your research interest. Thank you everyone for joining. Now we'll be looking forward to your participation also on our second workshop that where we will be talking about bioinformatics for non-bioinformaticians and those who are not from the bioinformatics background specifically, and those who are afraid of coding in general. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining. Bye-bye. Take care. Looking ahead to meet you all also in the symposium. And if you have any doubts, please mail me. We would be glad to help you out. Thank you.